Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
I'm Kerry Fink with Helping Seniors Television. Welcome to today's edition of Helping Seniors TV, presented by the 100% local to Brevard nonprofit Helping Seniors of Brevard. You know, when he's now president emeritus and founder, Joe Steckler, the same guy that created the Joe's Clubs that they built at the Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation when he was running that, he said, everybody has to have an aging plan. And I remember asking him years ago, because we were all together when he was first getting Helping Seniors started after he'd retired from Brevard Alzheimer's. And he said, Kerry, there's more work to be done for seniors. We've got to help seniors find navigation to resources and information that's going to help them with their aging plan. So I said, Joe, what's an aging plan? And he explained that everybody needs a plan. It doesn't mean you want to have a problem as you're aging, but he said you want to have kind of like a strategy or a game plan, if you will, about what you want to do. Here in Florida, we understand hurricane plan. It sure doesn't mean we want the storm. It just means we want to be prepared and know exactly how we're going to respond. That's the things that happen in aging, and that's where experience matters so much. You know, we have kind of euphemistically called getting an aging plan together. We call it getting your ducks in a row. And there's a couple of corollaries that we've added to that. Number one is, we call this one corollary number one. We say, don't try this on your own. There's so much good expertise here in Brevard County because 1 in 4 of us is over the age of 65 and 1 in 2 is over the age of 50. When AARP calls you a senior and mails you a card when you have your 50th birthday, whether you like it or not. So in Brevard County, you either are a senior, love and care for a senior, or just give yourself a year or two and you may be a senior. And so all the things we're going to talk about is relevant. But don't try this aging stuff on your own. There's so many good resources to grab a hold of. The second corollary that we add is don't be an ostrich. We say, you know, what our experience has taught us is that most challenges with aging are absolutely not going to get better with time. You want to be as far ahead of the aging curve as you can possibly be. And that brings us to the topic for today's program. I'm so excited to have with us. These folks have been, first of all, they're one of the premier elder law firms in town. All you got to do is go check the record for the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen, and you'll see the kind of law firm that she's built over a couple of decades of service here in Brevard County. She has some of the top attorneys and has really focused her specialization on being the best that you can be with all things elder law-wise, to the point that it actually has moved off into an area that I believe Amy's law office literally is the only office that I'm aware of elder law attorneys, or for that matter, any attorney that has such a thing. And we're talking about the topic of elder care coordination. We're going to get into what that is and what it means. And we're so fortunate to have with us today Amber Payne, who is the director of elder care coordination at the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen. Welcome, Amber. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have this conversation because, you know, there's terms from the outside looking in. And I always tell people I'm a media guy by trade. I never, everything that I've learned about senior care was either through the process of being caregivers for our moms. So I have some of that. But literally by talking with people who really know the business inside and out, like yourself. And I said, you know, people would use these terms like case manager and care manager. And to a person like off the street like me, I really wouldn't know what that meant. And so I really want to kind of maybe just start from the beginning and say, what is elder care coordination? I want to not make an assumption that we really know.
Sure. So elder care coordination it's what it sounds like. We help coordinate the care of the elder. That can be helping with finding an appropriate place for that person to live. That can be helping just with regular daily activities, whether it's helping them pay their bills, helping them manage additional care if they need home care or something like that, helping them find resources in the community that are appropriate for their personal situation, and really, in the end, just helping them navigate life through this aging journey.
You know, that is so important because we were joking before we started the TV show. I said, I always love to quote Amy Van Fossen on this because this to me has always had so much meaning. She said, Kerry, most people when they come into my office, they have one or two situations in their entire life that's dealing with some of the issues that elders run into. And she's talking about specifically, you know, with the attorney work and the things that she does on all that preparation from everything from estate planning, but also to health care, surrogate, to all the different things that you want to think through in your aging plan. And she said, you know, most people are doing this once or twice in their life. She said, you know, we are working on 20 or 30 of these every week. Yeah. And we've been doing that for 20 years. There's not much that we haven't seen before. And I was asking you, I said, I want people to understand about Amber Payne that you have an incredible background yourself of being involved in elder care for, I think you said something over 14 years in home care. So you've really seen and done it all as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So when you sit down with a family and you say, here's some things that we can do to help you, you're coming at it from a position of experience where you know instinctively and experientially how to direct them when a situation comes up. That, first of all, that has to make you feel pretty fulfilled in terms of being able to actually make a difference in people's lives. But it must be incredibly important for them, too.
Absolutely. And just to touch on that, so many times family think that their situation is so complicated and that it's unique and that there's no way we're going to be able to handle this, and helping them understand that this is what we do. You know, we see this all the time. Not to say each situation isn't different or unique, but just giving them the comfort that not that we're experts, but this is what we do. We know what we're doing.
You know, I was smiling as you were saying that because the image that popped into my head is if they walked us onto an airplane and said, here's the flight deck, okay, you guys sit down and you figure out how to fly the airplane. And we would sit there and go I don't know which button even starts the engine, let alone how we get this thing off the ground. But I think it's the same thing. The pilots would walk in and say, we know exactly how to get this plane off the ground. You guys go back there, have a beverage, relax. We leave the flying to us. And I was thinking, but isn't that something truthful about this? Because when the family comes in, from them, they're running into this. This is almost like crisis time. They're trying to figure out how on earth do we manage this? And for you, you have the breadth of expertise and experience. You know who to call, when to call, what the right solution for these particular problems are. That's got to be first of all, you're not only helping them solve the problem, but you're also giving them a lot of peace of mind.
Yes, and we hear that all the time. We don't know what we would do without you. Yeah. We don't know how we'd do this without your help. And it definitely it makes you feel good. But we're all, I think, most of us in the community, in this industry, we're problem solvers, and we work together and we come up with a good plan for each of our seniors.
So when we talk about elder care coordination, do you actually move down the path into the medical side of it as well?
Mm-hmm. So we have an RN case manager on staff. So when it gets above my pay grade, I can refer to the nurse, and the nurse is able to help with the medical side as well, whether that's managing the meds, attending doctor's appointments, helping families understand. Sometimes it's very hard to follow the doctor, especially if you're going through something like cancer or whatever it may be. She's able to listen and help you understand, because most of the time a client, when they're going through something like that, they're overwhelmed. They are paying attention, but they're not absorbing and understanding everything. And then Alicia's able to break that down for them.
Well, and I think there's another dynamic in that. And I'm just thinking of my own personal experience as we walk through with our own mothers and various doctor's visits, because you see one doctor, then they want you to go see the specialist. Specialist says, this is what we should do. And then you're back to the main doctor. And then the main doctor says, well, okay, let's do this. And then it feels like you're just chasing from one end of town to another, trying to keep all these appointments together, but without really understanding the big picture of what's trying to happen. And I got to believe that's one of the things that you can help sort out, because we're trying to listen to what the doctor is saying and figure out our next move. But you can take that, interpret it, and say, this is exactly what that next move might be. Yeah.
And I think that is a huge comfort to our families who need the assistance on the medical side.
You know, I wanted to jump back and say something, because I remember as we were talking about this, I think I mentioned it earlier in the show that we have never really heard of an attorney doing this, having this whole kind of elder care coordination department. And I remember asking Amy about it, and she said, Kerry, she said, I kind of did it because I care about my clients. Can you talk a little bit about how this all came to be and why it's important, you know, in a law practice for elders?
Yeah. So years ago, Amy had a client. This is when she was first getting started, and they were unfortunately being taken advantage of by a family member. And when it was recognized, it was too late.
Yeah.
But Amy said, I don't ever want this to happen to anybody else that I take care of or that I provide a service for our clients. And that's when she developed case management, and it's just grown from there, or elder care coordination.
Yeah, I've heard it jokingly referred to as rent a daughter, rent a son kind of thing. Because a lot of times I think what happens is there's several ways that somebody might call you, right? It could be that, well, we have our kids, but they're in, you know, Spokane or something, and they just can't get here that often. And, you know, we live here, and so we got to figure out things here. So you become sort of a lifeline for the people locally, but also great set of eyes and ears for the family that may be in a different part of the country. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have several families who live outside of the area, and they depend heavily on us to keep them informed and help them understand what's going on with their loved one. A lot of times the person that we're taking care of doesn't want to leave.
Right.
They've lived here forever. So we're able to help them stay here and age in place and keep the family informed as well. So.
Yeah, and then there's those families that for whatever reason, maybe they literally are on their own. There was some problems in the family, or maybe they just never had kids or things like that. And I find like, isn't that another area that you guys are really able to step in and help?
Yeah, yes, definitely. So it ranges from people who have family that are just busy. So, you know, a lot of times their loved ones who are responsible for them are still working full time.
Right.
So we're able to step in that instance, or if they're out of town, or if they didn't have children or had children that unfortunately are not trustworthy, that's where we can step in and fill that gap.
And then I think there's another layer to this, because not only are you able to do that, but you're providing that peace of mind, that part of the equation that makes it possible for people to thrive. Because I have seen this so many times. If somebody is not getting the right help, you know, just all the steps of it, they're not getting the right medication, they're not getting the right nutrition, they're not getting the right care, the quality of life is like, it just keeps going downhill. I mean, what's the old expression? There's only one way to coast, downhill. And yet when you guys can get involved and you start to manage some of these aspects, then people are not only surviving, but they really are thriving.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. You know, I remember asking somebody at Amy's office, do you have to be rich to afford this? You know, is it something like like a normal person can afford to do? And I was surprised to learn that it really is affordable, and you can kind of scale it and make it work for you correctly.
Yeah, so we work with families dependent on what their needs are. And when you think of the crises that we can help them avoid, you can't really put a price on that, you know. So, but we do have programs where maybe we're not super active, but you just want to have somebody in the wing that you know you have help if you need it, somebody you can call on. And we call that a standby feature. So it can be affordable.
You know, I remember having that conversation. I said, because it's basically that you want to invest a little bit of time, get this program set up, and then you may not need to touch it for years. But at the moment that you need it, now you're good. Yeah. And I've always understood that that's part of what every time I've ever sat down with Amy or Katie or Tyler or any of the great attorneys in the office there, I always walk away with the same sense. I said, yeah, you want to put this stuff together correctly now while you have time to think about it. Nobody's under pressure. There's no emergencies. She said, you know, we do great, you know, in a crisis. You know, that's what we're here to help with. But it sure is easier if somebody just comes in and has everything organized.
So much easier.
Yeah, because it seems like the job must be impossible, even though you guys are really good at it, when stuff is already, you know, flowing, and now you got to figure out what to do in the midstream. Whereas if you can just say, okay, before we're going to cross this bridge, we're going to go this direction with it, right? So
we call it pre-planning or setting yourself up for success, and it's definitely beneficial just to our team, but to the person that we're helping as well. Not to say that you can't come in the middle of the crisis, but that's hard on everybody, and it's also costly because we are going to be doing a lot all at one time. So
this is the point that, and I know this from having had these conversations so many times, if somebody will come in and do paperwork, whether it's the legal paperwork so that they have the right documents, for care if you can't look after yourself or things like that, when you do all that ahead of time and something is triggered that document needs to come into play, it's such peace of mind, not only for the person maybe going through these extreme medical situations, but their family, because now they sort of know exactly how to move because instructions are clear and laid out. Whereas what I gather is it can be very expensive because I've heard this once, I've heard this dozens of times. Somebody walks in, somebody's in a hospital, they're non-responsive, and now the family's trying to figure out how to move. And oftentimes the answer is, well, the only thing left is a guardianship because we can't find paperwork that gives us a cleaner path. And what I've heard over and over is, something that could have been solved with a $300 piece of paper now may cost $10,000, $12,000 because we have to get court system involved and all kinds of extra stuff. So it seems like there's every advantage in the world to kind of like getting set up early, which is why I wanted to come back and ask you about, like, walk me through, like, if somebody said, okay, I'm interested in trying to figure out how to set this up for the long term on elder care coordination. What would that actually look like? I'd make the appointment, I'd come in and sit down, and how would we start?
I have several clients that are in that exact situation, just to have somebody available to them in the future. And what it starts out, we do what we call an intake, and it gives us a good snapshot of what normal looks like, what today looks like. It's pretty in-depth. It takes us about 3 hours. It's medical and non-medical. And then after that, you go into our standby service, where even though you're not active with us, we're still going to reach out either once a quarter or biannually just to check in, see if anything's changed. And so we can keep the finger on the pulse of you and what your needs are and how you're progressing in your journey. And then we do ask if like something happens or if a medical event happens that you keep us updated. But once you get through the intake, it's really just us waiting for you to need us.
And that's a level of peace of mind and just knowing, because then when you lay your head down on the pillow at night, I've got a plan and it's going to take care of me if something else is going on. That peace of mind has to be absolutely incredible. I know I've talked to a lot of very satisfied customers with Amy. We were honored to be involved in a project where she had actually called in a number of folks that she'd done work with, her firm had done work with over the years, and just wanted to get some honest feedback from how they felt. And I kept hearing the same thing over and over. I said, I was really nervous about kind of coming in and getting all my paperwork done. But boy, when I left, I had that binder in my hand and I felt like, wow, I've really got this under control. That must be something you hear a lot on the same side when you're talking about elder care coordination.
I do. I feel like most of my appointments end with, I feel so much better now. So.
Yeah, because when you're trying to navigate this stuff on your own and you don't really even know, I always say this way, you don't even know the right question to ask. I tell this story, I remember very early on with my mom was about to be discharged from the hospital, and so the dutiful son trying to do the right thing shows up, and somebody walks in and says, well, I'm the case manager. And I didn't understand that there was a difference at that point between what, the case manager like in a hospital setting versus what the kind of work that you do in elder care coordination. But she goes, your mom is going to go to rehab. Which rehab do you want her to go to? And I was sitting there going like, what do you mean? I don't even know what a rehab is at that point. How would I? And she goes, well, here's a directory. You can start picking through here. I said, can't you tell me? She said, we're not allowed to tell you. It's the rules. She said, but I can tell you, maybe start looking at stars in here. And so there I am, I'm paging through, and they got to have an answer this afternoon because they're ready. Mom is ready to be discharged. And I'm thinking like, that puts the family under like a ridiculous amount of stress. And I'm thinking like, but that's totally different because you actually can help navigate those kind of decisions. If somebody has Amber Payne and the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen working with them, you're going to be able to help navigate. So the doctor says you got to go for rehab. This might be the best situation. Those are the kind of things you get into, right? Talk about that.
Yeah. So The advantage I have is I've gotten to know this person. I know what is best for them, as far as, or not even what's best for them, what they want. They let me know on that first initial intake what their preferences are, what they like, what they don't like. And we go over nursing homes. We go over hospitals. We go over home care, hospice, all of them, right? So I already have a pre-plan from the beginning of what that person wants. But we are in and out of these buildings and these facilities all the time. So we know we have a really good understanding of what is out there, and we're able to sort of matchmake and put those pieces together like a puzzle.
You know, you really are the personification of what we talk about. We say, don't try this on your own. Get an expert. And there's a couple of things that we always talk about. We say you really need to get somebody who's local, boots on the ground, who knows Brevard County. Because a lot of times, this happens in a lot of areas, somebody will see a famous actor that they loved on TV, and they really admired the TV show, and this person is giving advice about anything from reverse mortgages to a place for mom or dad or whatever. And the challenge is you call the 800 number and you're talking to a call center in the Midwest instead of somebody who's right here in your community, who knows what's a good facility, who knows what's the right solution for this, because they just know the geography. They know that Titusville is not the same as Satellite Beach. They know that Barefoot Bay is not anywhere near West Melbourne, or things like that. These are the things that you know and can help guide families and individuals through.
It makes it very personal. I had a client, it's funny you say that, who lived in Barefoot Bay, who had a medical event, and this is before I was on board with her. Ended up in the hospital and didn't have family, and they moved her to West Melbourne. Well, she's all the way in Barefoot Bay. Like, how did that make sense for her? So had she had an advocate or somebody like me in the picture, we would have been able to say, maybe we keep her closer to home so that her neighbor can come visit her,
Yeah, it's about getting help that's local and expert. There's two things. A lot of times if you're a tinkerer, you like to do it yourself. But I've also had this conversation with Amy and some of the attorneys in the office too. They talk about the people who might go online, they saw a commercial, so they think they can do their own estate planning and things like that. And it sure sounds good on TV. But what I've heard is the horror stories on the back end, because the moment that you need that piece of paper to function correctly, it's not like you have an opportunity to do a do-over. You can't go, oh, I forgot to check that box. You have to have it right the first time. But I'm thinking that's the quality of care that you need all the way through everything. You don't want to make this by chance. So when you get set up with you for elder care coordination through the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen, it's like you're bringing on a whole team of experts to help guide you correctly.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah. From beginning to end, we are a team, but we walk you through all the stages, right? So you're pre-planning, and then you're executing, and then even towards the end with your, if you need probate, then we help you all the way through that. So
yeah, and again, I can't help but remember Amy saying she really did it kind of out of not self-preservation, but self-preservation for her clients, I guess, wanting to make sure that they weren't getting abused, weren't getting ripped off, that they were getting the best possible quality of care in every level. And because of your experience, that's what you guys are able to organize for folks.
Yeah. Not only are we helping those in our community, I think everybody in our firm and in our community, I think, care about people, and it allows you to sleep at night because you know these people are taken care of.
So if somebody's interested in exploring what this might mean, I know oftentimes if I'm talking with Katie or Tyler or one of the great attorneys in the law firm, we'll talk about the fact that Amy's very generous with her time about creating these seminars where people can go and learn about the different topics that they need to school themselves about. How does it work with the elder care? What's a great way for somebody to get this whole journey started?
Well, you can always call the office, and that'll set up a time for you to speak with me or somebody on my team. You can go online and read a little bit about us. We do also do seminars for elder care.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we haven't rolled them out yet, but we'll do them like private ones, one-on-one in the office. But we will be eventually doing the seminars for the elder care coordination.
So important that people understand all the ramifications. If somebody does want to get in touch with the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen, and maybe specifically talking to Amber Payne in the Elder Care Coordination Department, how do we do that?
Well, you would call our office at 345-5945, or you can always go online and check us out at amybvanfossen.com.
So we were talking with Amber Payne, who is the Director of Elder Care Coordination. Now, some people may call it something in the family of care management, case management. But again, I want to be careful with that designation because, like I said, it really confused me at the hospital. Because I have to tell you, I walked away from that. The person was wonderful. They were trying to be as helpful as they could, but they really weren't much help because they couldn't be much help. And what you're doing is totally different because you're in that situation. You're in our corner trying to help move us in the right direction.
Right. So for years, we were called case managers because that's kind of encompassing of what we do. Yeah. But once I came on board, I realized there is confusion in the community about what case management means at an attorney's office. Does that mean you manage her cases? What does that mean? So Amy and I talked for a while, and we came up with elder care coordination. There's actually a community of other law firms in the United States, life care planning attorneys of America. So we looked into that and realized what they're doing is calling themselves elder care coordinators, which makes so much more sense. So we started rebranding and became a part of that group. And I feel like it's taken the confusion, and I get a lot of, I get that now.
Makes a big difference. So one more time, if somebody wants to learn about elder care coordination directly, maybe take the next step, they're going to call you?
You can give us a call at the office at 321-345-5945.
Well, thank you, Amber Payne, with the Law Office of Amy B. Van Fossen, for sharing some insight into elder care coordination and how it can improve the quality of our lives. So that's the time we have for today's Helping Seniors Television. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next episode.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.